So NASA wants to go back to the moon. You know, that big rock we visited 6 times in the late 60s and early 70s, took some selfies, hit a few golf balls, and then just never went back. It's like humanity collectively said, well, that was fun. What's for dinner? But now, over 50 years later, NASA is like, hey, remember the moon? That was cool. Let's do that again, but this time with better Wi-Fi and more diversity. Welcome to the Artemis Mission, because apparently we've finally worked up the courage to call our cosmic X. Today we're diving into NASA's ambitious plan to not just visit the moon again, but actually stay there this time. And trust me, it's more complicated than your last relationship status. First, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the moon in the room. Why are we going back to a place we've already been? Well, imagine if Christopher Columbus had discovered America, planted a flag, collected some rocks, and then Spain was like, cool story, Chris. Let's never speak of this again. That's basically what we did with the moon. We proved we could get there. We beat the Russians, achieved peaceful space exploration goals, and then we got distracted by other things, like Tang and disco, and figuring out how to make computers smaller than a refrigerator. But here's the thing, the moon isn't just a fancy camping trip destination. It's basically the ultimate stepping stone to Mars. Think of it as the world's most expensive truck stop. But instead of questionable gas station hot dogs, you get, well, actually, you might still get questionable food. Have you seen astronaut meals? The moon has water ice at its poles, and I'm not talking about the kind you put in your drink. This is rocket fuel, people! Split that H2O into hydrogen and oxygen and boom, you've got yourself a cosmic gas station. It's like finding a Starbucks in the middle of nowhere, except instead of overpriced coffee, it's overpriced rocket fuel. So what exactly is Artemis? Well, it's named after Apollo's twin sister in Greek mythology, because apparently NASA learned that including women in your space program is not just good PR, it's also good science. Who knew? Artemis isn't just one mission. It's like a whole Netflix series, but with more explosions and a budget that would make Marvel jealous. We're talking about a multi-phase plan that's more complex than assembling IKEA furniture, but hopefully with better instructions. The plan goes like this. First, we're going to fly around the moon without landing, just to make sure we remember how to get there. It's like doing a practice lap before the actual race, except the practice lap costs several $1 billion. Then, we're actually going to land people on the moon again. And here's the kicker. NASA has promised that the first woman and the first person of color will walk on the lunar surface. It's about time, honestly. The moon has been a pretty exclusive club of white dudes for way too long. But wait, there's more. Unlike the Apollo missions, which were basically expensive camping trips, Artemis plans to establish a permanent presence. We're talking about a lunar base, people. An actual moon city. Though I suspect the rent will be astronomical. Literally. Now let's talk about the hardware, because boy, do we have some fancy new toys. The star of the show is the Space Launch System, or SLS, which definitely doesn't stand for Seriously Large Amp Scary, though it should. This rocket is huge. We're talking about a 322-foot-tall monster that's more powerful than the Saturn V that got us to the moon the first time. It's so big that when it launches, it's basically a controlled explosion equivalent to detonating several atomic bombs, except we're using it to throw people at the moon instead of, destroying cities. The SLS can launch 95 tons to the moon. For context, that's about the weight of 14 elephants, or one really ambitious Amazon Prime delivery. Though I doubt Jeff Bezos would offer free shipping to lunar orbit. Then there's the Orion spacecraft, the actual crew vehicle. Think of it as an Uber for astronauts, except the ride costs about $4 billion and there's no option to split the fare. Orion is designed to keep astronauts alive in the harsh environment of space, which is trickier than it sounds. Space is basically trying to kill you in every way possible: radiation, temperature extremes, the vacuum of space, and probably space madness if you're up there long enough. But here's my favorite part: the Lunar Gateway. It's a small space station that will orbit the moon. Essentially, NASA is building a moon hotel, except instead of room service, you get freeze-dried ice cream and the constant existential dread of being 240,000 miles from the nearest Starbucks. Artemis 1 was an uncrewed test flight that launched in November 2022. Think of it as sending your car through the car wash before you get in, except the car wash is the vacuum of space, and your car costs more than some countries' GDP. The mission was basically a really expensive trust exercise. NASA said, "Hey rocket, we trust you not to explode with people inside," and the rocket said, "Hold my fuel and watch this." Spoiler alert, it worked. The rocket didn't explode, the Orion capsule made it to the moon and back, and NASA engineers everywhere could finally sleep again. Artemis 2 is planned to be the first crewed mission around the moon since 1972. 4 astronauts will basically take the ultimate joyride, a 250,000-mile road trip with no bathroom stops and freeze-dried food. It's like the worst family vacation ever, except at the end, you get to tell people you've been to the moon. But Artemis 3 is where things get really exciting. That's when we actually land on the moon again. The current plan is to touch down near the lunar South Pole, because apparently we've gotten bored of the same old moon real estate and want to check out the neighborhood with all the ice. The astronauts will use a new lunar lander called the Human Landing System, which is being developed by SpaceX. Yes, the same SpaceX that launched a car into space because Elon Musk thought it would be funny. Though to be fair, if you're going to trust anyone with your multi-billion-dollar moon mission, it might as well be the guy who made electric cars cool and revolutionized rocket landing. Now, as with any ambitious plan involving rocket science and government budgets, there are a few tiny obstacles. And by tiny, I mean absolutely massive. First, there's the money situation. The Artemis program has a budget that fluctuates more than Bitcoin prices. Congress keeps asking NASA, "How much will this cost?" And NASA keeps answering, "How much do you have?" It's like trying to renovate your kitchen, except your kitchen is on the moon and the contractor is the federal government. Current estimates put the total program cost at over $93 billion through 2025. For context, that's enough money to buy Twitter, except instead of getting a social media platform that may or may not work, you get to put footprints on another celestial body. Honestly, better investment. Then there are the technical challenges. Landing on the moon isn't like parallel parking. It's more like parallel parking while blindfolded in a car you've never driven during an earthquake. The lunar surface is covered in a fine dust called regolith, which sounds harmless but is basically like microscopic glass shards that get into everything. Imagine sand at the beach, but angrier and more likely to break your equipment. There's also the radiation problem. Unlike Earth, the moon has no atmosphere and no magnetic field to protect against cosmic radiation. It's like getting an X-ray that lasts for days, except instead of seeing your bones, you're slowly cooking from the inside. Fun. And let's not forget about the political challenges. NASA has to maintain support through multiple presidential administrations, which is like trying to play a 4-year-long game of telephone where each person who passes the message might completely change the rules. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't just an American moon party anymore. NASA has partnered with space agencies from Canada, Europe, Japan and other countries through the Artemis Accords. It's like assembling the Avengers, except instead of fighting aliens, they're fighting the vacuum of space and congressional budget committees. The Artemis Accords are basically a set of guidelines for peaceful lunar exploration. Think of them as the moon's terms and conditions, except people actually read these ones because they involve international law and not just agreeing to let Facebook sell your data. But there's also competition. China has been making some serious moves with their lunar program, and Russia has been doing Russia things. It's like the new space race, except this time, instead of just proving who has the bigger rockets, everyone wants to actually set up shop and stay. China's Tang missions have been steadily advancing their lunar capabilities, and they've announced plans for crewed lunar missions in the 2030s. It's like that friend who says they're also thinking about running a marathon right after you announce your training plan, except the marathon is on the moon and costs billions of dollars. So what happens after we get back to the moon? Well, NASA has some pretty ambitious plans. They want to establish a permanent lunar base, possibly at the moon's south pole. Think of it as humanity's first off-world suburb, except instead of worrying about the HOA, you're worrying about meteorite impacts and solar radiation. The base would serve multiple purposes: scientific research, technology testing for Mars missions, and resource extraction, particularly that water ice we talked about earlier. NASA estimates there could be billions of tons of water ice at the lunar poles. That's enough to keep a lunar base running and fuel missions to Mars and beyond. They're also talking about lunar mining operations, not just for water, but for rare Earth elements and other materials that are abundant on the moon but scarce on Earth. Imagine Amazon Prime delivery, but the warehouse is on the moon and shipping takes 3 days instead of 2. And here's the really crazy part. Some scientists think the moon could eventually become a launching pad for missions to Mars and the outer solar system. It takes much less energy to launch from the moon than from Earth, thanks to lower gravity and no atmosphere. The moon could become humanity's cosmic airport. But let's zoom out for a moment and think about what this really means. We're talking about becoming a truly spacefaring species. Not just visitors to space, but residents. The Artemis program isn't just about going back to the moon. It's about taking the next step in human evolution. Our species evolved on one planet, but there's no reason we have to stay here forever. The moon base could be the first permanent human settlement beyond Earth. Think about that. There could be people born on the moon who consider it their home. Moon babies. Though I suspect the paperwork for their birth certificates will be complicated. This also represents a massive leap in international cooperation. When countries work together on projects this ambitious, it's harder to point missiles at each other. It's like the ultimate team-building exercise, except instead of trust falls, you're trusting each other with multi-billion-dollar spacecraft. And let's be honest, humanity needs some good news right now. Climate change, political divisions, social media making everyone angry about everything. Sometimes we need a reminder that humans can do incredible things when we work together. Like literally reaching for the stars. So when is all this happening? Well, NASA's timeline is optimistic. Artemis the Sword is currently planned for late 2024, but if you've ever dealt with any government project, you know that planned for and will definitely happen in are two very different things. Artemis III, the actual lunar landing, is targeted for 2026, though many experts think 2027 or 2028 is more realistic. In government project terms, that's basically sometime in the late 2020s, hopefully. But here's the thing about ambitious timelines. Even if NASA is off by a few years, we're still talking about humans walking on the moon again within this decade. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. Kids who are in elementary school right now might watch live streams of astronauts building the first lunar base. The program has survived multiple political administrations so far, which is encouraging. Usually, when a new president comes in, they cancel the previous administration's space plans faster than a Netflix series with low ratings. But Artemis seems to have enough bipartisan support to keep moving forward. So there you have it, NASA's Artemis mission, humanity's plan to not just visit the moon again, but to actually stick around this time. It's ambitious, expensive, technically challenging, and absolutely necessary for our future as a species. Sure, there will be delays, budget overruns, and probably at least one congressional hearing where someone asks why we're spending money on space when we have problems on Earth, as if we can't do both. But that's okay. The greatest achievements in human history have never been easy or cheap. In a few years, we might be watching live footage of the first woman stepping onto the lunar surface. We might see the construction of humanity's first off-world city. We might witness the beginning of our transformation from a single-planet species to a truly spacefaring civilization. And honestly, after everything humanity has been through lately, don't we deserve to shoot for the moon? Literally this time. If you enjoyed this cosmic comedy hour, make sure to subscribe for more space content that's both educational and mildly amusing. And let me know in the comments, are you excited about humanity's return to the moon, or are you too busy worrying about Earth problems to care about space dreams? Thanks for watching, and remember, we're all just passengers on spaceship Earth, hurtling through the cosmos at 67,000 miles per hour. We might as well enjoy the ride and maybe visit some of the other destinations along the way.